Great. So for those watching at home, thank you for tuning in. My name is Emma Peleg and I'm the Collaborations Manager at the Spinal Research Institute. I'm joined today by a remarkable woman, Rhiannon Tracey. And Rhiannon is the founder of the Next Step Spinal Cord Injury Recovery and Wellness Centre, which is a non-profit organisation in Australia. And through her inspiring work, she's determined to see change and options given to people living with spinal cord injury. Rhiannon, thank you for your time today. It's really great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So you have filled a gap here in Melbourne, Australia that really, it didn't exist 6 years ago, and most certainly it wasn't even on the radar just over a decade ago when you sustained your spinal cord injury. So your business, if I can just elaborate a little, is a one-stop shop for people with spinal cord injury and other conditions to get active. And I love that you call your customers athletes. They've also got access to massage and naturopathy and acupuncture. And, you know, this must be something that you're very proud of for the community.
Absolutely. I think what was so obvious and so important when I was injured was that there was, as you said, there was a lack of options for people who just really wanted to improve their quality of life. And I felt like, you know, we were somewhat restricted to what was available within the hospital setting. But, you know, life starts post-hospital and rehab, as the nurses were consistently saying. So I was out there searching for options and meeting so many people that were doing the same thing. And it just got to a point where I was like, why aren't we doing something here? And it was a search. And got a bit of feedback.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that.
Oh, it's all good now. Technology.
Yeah.
But so basically I was just meeting a lot of people who were searching for those same options, and I couldn't really understand why something like this hadn't been done. As I dove into it, I realized why it hadn't been done. It was definitely a mission, but it wasn't mission impossible. I think it just, the firecracker needed to be set off by someone who was directly affected and really needed to put that fire and that passion into it to get it off the ground. And here we are, been open for 6 years, but we've been a not-for-profit organisation now for almost 8, and we're doing some pretty amazing things and improving lives, and it's definitely given me a purpose post-accident, that's for sure.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and I haven't been out there yet to see it, but it certainly sounds like it's a great holistic approach to people once they get out of the acute care and start moving forward with their lives. So yeah, really, really exciting to hear about it. So what sort of health challenges do you face on a sort of day-to-day basis, and how do you overcome them?
Such a good question, because there's been so many conversations about challenges, I guess, overall during this pandemic that we're going through. But I guess this time, these last few months, has actually made me realise just how vulnerable I am with a spinal cord injury. And, I fought really hard for my independence, as we all do when we're affected by this injury. And I got myself to, I live on my own. There's really nothing that I can't do that I, did prior to my injury. But at the end of the day, I do have the injury, so I do have the complications. And, there's been a couple of times during this where I have got quite frustrated because, certain people around me have said, you're the most non-disabled person that we know. And it's been during a time where I have felt really vulnerable. And I was having this conversation with my mum the other day, and she said to me, you know what, Rhiannon, the front that people see with you is that, you're a hard worker and you're independent and motivating, and, you just do what you need to do to soldier on. But at the end of the day, I have the bowel and I have the bladder, and I think they're the two most life-dictating things that come with this injury. And I'm sure many people watching this would agree that, if we have a bad bowel day, we get quite anxious about leaving the house, and it's our reality. And, if we're out and about, we need to use a bathroom and there isn't an accessible bathroom available. I think overall health my health is generally pretty good, but it's those complications that, you know, that make the day-to-day life a little bit of a struggle. Yes, it's manageable, but sometimes it's not. And I think it all comes down to the mindset behind it too, understanding and knowing that even able-bodied people have bowel issues and, you know, have bad bowel days. And accidents happen, you know, like who's and we's are a human. Well, they're not even a human, they're everything part of life. And, you know, society has their own opinions about it, but it is what it is. And if we have an accident, I think what's important for us to remember is that it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? Yes, it's embarrassing. You know, yes, in the moment it shatters confidence a little bit, but I think as the years go by, you learn to manage these things a little bit better. And when I say manage, I'm not talking about preventing it from happening. I'm talking about what you do when it does happen, being prepared, having the things you need to be as inconspicuous as possible, so people around you may not know what's happening. You know, I just think you come up with some, as my friends and my family call them, some really good life hacks to manage those situations.
Wheelie with a W, perfect.
That's it.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, bladder and bowel is obviously something that comes up for most people that have some level of spinal cord injury. And I guess I was going to ask you how it affects your business. I'm sure that you're well set up for your athletes that come and see you. And have those sorts of implications affected how you've run the business, particularly in the early years?
Absolutely, and still do to this day, so much so that I've actually, during this, again, like these last couple of months have been such a eye-opener, because I've even realized that you know, I am limited. At the end of the day, I'm limited with, you know, my capacity of what I can and can't do. And I've always, even before my injury, been someone who, you know, burns the candle at both ends. And my mum's exactly the same, you know, it's a family trait. But during this last couple of months, I've really kind of acknowledged that I do that, and that has an effect on my health, so much so that I've actually just had to say to my whole team basically that, you know, it's time for me to actually acknowledge and value and set some boundaries so that I can maintain, you know, my overall physical and mental health. I've got a great team behind me, obviously, of able-bodied people. And I've recently just had an amazing admin or team development manager join our team, who's kind of my wing woman. So she can be somebody who's there when I can't be there, because at the end of the day, this injury is unpredictable, and so are the complications associated with it. We don't know, you know, how each day is going to go until we actually wake up in the morning and we've done our bow and we've done our morning routine. So, you know, it definitely has had its challenges, but I guess I hate to use the word lucky, but I've been smart in who I've had join my team and who's been my team, you know, smart enough to know that my whole team understands. Like, we work with people with these injuries every day, and if they didn't understand, they wouldn't be working in the environment they do. But, you know, it's been really important to have somebody by my side who can be there when I can't be there. It's definitely been a struggle, because I want to be there, like I want to be there all the time. But, you know, the reality is I can't be.
Oh, well, that sounds like, you know, your first part about how you keep life positive for yourself, and that's choosing the right people to support the areas you need. And that definitely wouldn't be easy, coming across the right people. What other things do you do to stay positive? Because I know I can see that that's just who you are in some respects, but this is such a major event in your life. How did you continue to stay positive in life?
Yeah, look, I think that I think I am overall, I try to be a positive person, but the reality is we all have bad days. Like, and I actually remember a really significant moment when I first had my injury, and I was in the Royal Talbot, and I was in an electric chair, and I couldn't feed myself. Actually, I don't even think I was in the electric chair at that point. I think I was in that big Battlestar Galactica chair that they put you in when you first are able to get out of bed. And I remember, because my mum actually pushed me into the kitchen, or into the dining area. And I started crying, and, there was obviously, it was a time where a lot of tears were shed. So, it was for her, she was just kind of like, okay, more tears. I understand, And I said to her, look, I'm actually not crying for me. I'm crying because, next to me was a father who was a high level quadriplegic who, couldn't even hug his kids. His wife had, I think, a 12-month-old at that time. And I just, in that moment, I realized that even though things felt really horrible, and they were horrible, that, there was always somebody out there that was going through a worst case scenario than you. And I think that's kind of the mentality that I've maintained throughout this whole journey, is that times are tough, but, I'm tougher. And there's always someone out there that, is struggling a little bit more, or perhaps doesn't have the same support that you do. And I also just surround myself with really good people. And I think I say to everyone that I speak to who's either newly injured, or who's been injured for a while, I think with this injury comes what I like to call a superpower. And it's a BS filter. You learn to filter out the rubbish. You learn to filter out the BS that is people, that is negative energy, things that just don't pep up your spirits. And I keep it that way. And I also have a lot of animals that keep me, happy and joyful and positive. So they definitely contribute to the positivity as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really lovely. Lots of pets, huh?
Oh, I do. I've got 3 dogs and 2 cats and a horse, and that's just under my roof.
That will keep you busy. Wow. And the business. That's okay. That's a lot. Well, so your time that you spent in the clinical environment and the years after your spinal cord injury were mixed with regards to both attitudes and what was offered and available to you to empower you forward after your injury. And that's obviously why you worked so hard to bring your business to fruition. As you know, the Spinal Research Institute's focused on building spinal cord injury research collaborations, and we're doing that across the globe. Have you been involved in any research yourself?
Not personally. I remember in the really early days of my injury, there was a few things going on at Talbot that were offered to me, but I was doing other forms of recovery options that I couldn't really, because during those things that I was being offered, all those trials that were happening, you were either put into an active or a non-active group. So signing up for those things meant that there would be a significant amount of time that potentially I wasn't allowed to do therapies. And I had already, I'd already invested quite a bit into my recovery that I just wasn't prepared to put on hold. So I haven't been involved in any research. That being said, the next step has a partnership with the Peleg Foundation moving forward into the clinical trials that will hopefully take place next year. So, even in that, I'm umming and ahhing if that's something, again, personally, as someone living with the injury, that I want to be involved in, because I do know, the commitment and everything that is required. And, the outcomes, of course, I'm sure will be amazing, but it's like I'm 11 years post-injury, or almost 11 years post-injury now, and my life has very much adapted, so that I can have a good life. And I just don't know where these things would fit into my life now. Like, look, if I could walk again tomorrow, would I? Well, of course, but unfortunately it's not that simple. But at the end of the day too, when we talk about these research things, we talk about wanting to walk, we talk about our bowel and bladder and getting all those things back. I would wholeheartedly take my bowel and bladder back tomorrow over walking any day. And if there was a magic pill for that, I'd take it right now. But in regards to signing up, for things that have potentially greater outcomes like walking, well, I'm unsure.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's really good. Yeah, I mean, you've touched on the sort of the full recovery type of research, and the everyday impact research, such as bowel and bladder. And one thing that we're working on is a consumer engagement research program, which is to really provide that link and education and support to people with the lived experience to be a part of research from the beginning, from the very beginning, and also to educate the researchers on that inclusion, so that if you are a part of research in the future, you are a part of something that's structured to suit your life as well. So it's not a big imposition. It's something that, you know, can fit in around your life. So really important to have that experience, that input.
Absolutely. I think, you know, when you're initially injured, you'll jump on the bandwagon for any opportunity. But I think, you know, as the years progress in your recovery journey, you know, and I always call it a journey because I feel like it's nonstop because we're always learning new things. I think as human beings, we're always learning new things. But I think, yeah, as the journey unfolds, you have a greater realization for the things or the minor things that we took for granted before we had the injury. So, you know, being able to have your bowel and bladder, or being able to hug a family member or drive a car. And I think we become a little bit more, you know, excited or invested in opportunities, as you mentioned, for, you know, the everyday kind of life implications that we once took for granted. They're definitely more invested in those. But yeah, I think at that initial point of injury, I just want to walk again. You know what I mean? I just want to walk again. And where do I sign up to make that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. How do I get back that life that I had? And So there might be a bit of an evolution in what research interests you from at different times of your life after injury. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I know within myself, there's so much that I've learned that I would never have been interested in, you know, like health from where it be food or holistic supports, or, you know, growing herbs in the garden or drinking teas or whatever, you know, like these are all things that I never would have looked twice at. But now I just want to know everything. I'm like a sponge. If something could potentially, you know, make me feel a little bit better, then of course I'm going to try it, as long as it's got no crazy side effects.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good you're open to.
I say that, but I drink all of the wine, which clearly has side effects.
Oh, you got to test it all out. You never know.
Right. It helps me sleep at
night. Oh, that's great. So, look, before we finish up, is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience? You know, just broadly, as from your experiences, or with regards to your business and what's happening with that lately?
Yeah, look, I think I'm just gonna bring up something that I actually heard Perry Cross say a couple of weeks ago during one of his live webinars. And if anyone's watching this and you don't know who Perry Cross is, please look him up, because, you know, I hate using the word inspirational. I hate when people refer to me as inspirational. I like motivational. But you know, he said something the other day that really kind of, it woke me, and that was, there's a difference between living, having a life. Now I can't even remember the whole quote. It was something along the lines of, there's a difference between being alive, living, or having a life. And I think that you know, when we are initially injured, it's so easy to remember, you know, the significant things that we think have been taken away from us. And, you know, when I had my injury, I just bought myself a new car. And, you know, I thought at that time I had a great boyfriend and my career was where I wanted it to be. And they were the things that, you know, when they were taken away from me, they really affected me. But it wasn't until I realized the significance of the fact that I'd survived. Like, my injury happened in Bali, so the fact that I even made it back to Australia safe, you know, was pretty significant in itself. But you know, I think the significance of the fact that you're still here, and, you know, you're still here for a reason. There's still so many options. And I'm not talking about physical options. I'm talking about, you know, options for you to have the quality of life that you may think in that moment you're not allowed to have, or you don't get to have. And I think it's really important to hold on to hope, because things do get better. You know, when you first have that injury, you feel like the whole world has come falling down. But I think everybody watching this will agree that things get better and you find ways to adapt. And as human beings, we adapt. Like, look at us all. We've just adapted to, you know, being in isolation for the last 2 months. You learn to adapt, and you learn how to do the things that you loved doing in a different way prior to your injury. And you know, I'm someone who never went to the wheelchair skills classes when I was in Royal Talbot, because I refused to accept the fact that I was in a wheelchair. And I had so many arguments with the physios and the doctors and everything, because, you know, they were telling me how important these sessions were. And here we are 11 years down the track, and I still don't know how to get down a gutter. You know what I mean? So, which, you know, is a great conversation opener for a single girl in a wheelchair. But, you know, at the same time, when we talk about independence and I say, you know, I'm completely independent, well, I guess I'm not. You know, so I think you've just got to be open to what is available for you while you're in that hospital setting too, because 10 years ago, once we were out, that was it, you know, and I didn't appreciate what was on offer to me when I was in the hospital, because I was so stuck in this angry mindset of, you know, I won't accept this, but hope was what I needed. And, you know, I've spent each day since I've had my injury being in a place where I am available for a conversation. I am available to help provide options, and I am available, you know, to really just say it how it is. And, you know, I think it all comes down to, again, the BS filter and surrounding yourself with the good energy and the positive people, and, you know, really just being aware that, again, overall, things get better. Things do get better.
Yeah. Well, they're beautiful words. And I think if I were ever in that situation, those sorts of words and your experiences are what would help me forward. So I love hearing that you are still a part of other people's first experience in this, in spinal cord injury. So I think that's a really fantastic thing that you can bring to them. And I guess if anyone wants to find out a bit more about what you do and your business, they can find you on rhiannontracey.com.au, or follow you on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram.
I don't really use Twitter, but definitely Instagram, just or a Google search. Definitely, I'm linked. Everything I do is obviously linked to the next step, and you know, just to touch a little bit on why we decided to call the facility the next step, and just to kind of touch on the facility a little bit more is, you know, what we offer is literally the next step after leaving the hospital and becoming an outpatient. You know, when I decided to start the centre, we talked about filling that gap, you know, having options for people who wanted to improve their quality of life. And, you know, that's in a physical sense, it's in a mental sense, it's in a holistic sense. Everybody has their own beliefs, and they all have their own wants and needs. And for me, it was about kind of collecting the things that I felt were working for me, and also, you know, working for the others that I was meeting along the way. And even, you know, I even collected one of the nurses who was a spinal nurse and popped her in amongst the mix as well. You know, and it wasn't just about, you know, what we provided as a service. It was, as we spoke earlier, about the team as well. It was really about collecting everything that worked and putting it into one kind of educational resource hub that could provide pretty much anything that anyone needed, because, you know, the traveling was physically and mentally taxing. You know, back when I had my injury, there was no NDIS available. Things were really hard. You know, social workers and things like that were quite scarce. So it was about, you know, having the people that could help assist in getting the things you're entitled to, assist in a physical sense, assist in a mental sense as well. I'm a motivational speaker, and I became a life coach a couple of years ago as well, because I became like this source of knowledge. Like I said, I've become so much more interested in the body as a whole. So that's education that I knew I wanted to have, that I wanted to be able to deliver, not just to the people that were directly affected, but to their families, to their carers and such. So yeah, it was really about just kind of having something that was all in one spot to provide to anybody who had a spinal cord injury or a neurological disorder. And now we even have people without, spinal cord injuries and neurological disorders that come just to improve their overall health and well-being. So, for me, my recovery was all about, the mind down. Everything started up here. And if I felt like if I wasn't in a good mindset, then the rest of my body, wasn't going to recover. And recovery is a big word for me. Initially, it was all about walking, but as the years progressed, it became about living the best life possible. And that's what we preach. We don't practice, or we don't tell everyone they're going to walk again, because we know that just doesn't happen for everyone. But for us, it's really about improving the quality of life, and that's managing those complications associated with this injury, as well as getting people out and about into the community, or returning to work, or returning to university and things like that. So it's just a place where good stuff happens.
Certainly sounds like it.
You'll have to come visit. We reopen this week, so you'll have to come visit.
Yeah, no, we'd love to do that. We're not far away, so no, but a fantastic offering to people in a similar position to you. And I guess they can also, anyone interested can look up the Next Step SCI Recovery and Wellness Centre. That's right. So yeah, look, thank you so much for joining myself and the Spinal Research Institute in conversation. It's been great chatting with you.
Me too.
Could chat all day about many things.
I'm sure we could.
Hopefully some nice little tidbits for people in a similar situation, and for the research community itself. So yeah, thanks very much, Rhiannon.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks.
See you later.